what's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and continue learning about words that Canadians say differently. Or, I suppose, if you're Canadian, this would be words that Americans say differently. But either way, this is a continuation of a video I did a while back where I was learning about specific words that Americans and Canadians say differently. It's the same item, the same thing, but we call it a different word. And I was actually pretty shocked at how many different words Americans and Canadians use for random everyday items, honestly. In part one, I remember there were Canadians call them pylons, but we say traffic cones. Canadians say write a test, and in America we say take a test. Very random kind of stuff, and grammatically kind of different. And there was a garburator. What was a garburator? Oh man, that sounds like a medieval torture device or something. It was a garbage disposal. Garburator is a garbage disposal. Anyway, there's a lot of weird, fun stuff like that that's different between like Canadian English and American English. There's some differences actually, and I wanted to take a look at another video that's going to highlight some of these differences. Different words that Canadians use, and actually this video here features a Canadian, an American, and then on the left is a Brit, someone from Britain. And I know that Canada and Britain have a little overlap in sort of the language and some of the culture. So this is actually going to be kind of interesting to have that third culture of Great Britain, and that how their language might be similar or different to Canada and the United States. So let's jump ahead here to the first one. The first word that Canadians say differently than us Americans. Let's see.
This first one is definitely the letter Z, although as a child we watched the American version of Sesame Street, and they tried to get me to learn it as the letter Z, but this in Canada is definitely the letter Z.
Wow, that's funny. I've heard this one before. Z. Oh my gosh, I actually feel a little self-conscious about the Z these days because I actually thought us Americans, we say Z. I've always said Z. I thought that was normal. And then, like, later on in my adult life, I learned America is actually the weird one. It seems like most other countries say Z, and we're the strange one. I thought everyone else was weird. Forget it. You know what? Everyone else is weird. We're, in true American fashion, we're doing it. We got it right. It's Z. But I think in Britain they say Z, in Canada they say Z. That's funny, thinking about, yeah, if Canadians are kind of consuming American media and television or children's shows growing up, Canadians heard, like from Sesame Street, the letter Z. That is funny to think about. That would have really confused me as a child. Wow.
XYZ.
I would definitely call this letter Z.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. For me, in the UK, in British English, it is the letter Z as well.
Z. Okay, that's what I thought. This one I am a little familiar with. So let's jump ahead to the next one. Here we go.
So we call these either running shoes or runners in Canadian English. If you're going to go out for a walk or a run,
Runners.
you put on your running shoes or you put on your runners.
Runners. That's interesting. I have not heard of that, but in a strange way, I think I would understand what you're saying. I'm imagining a Canadian saying like runners, and I'm just like, I think I understand what you're saying. If you're like, I'm gonna put on my runners and go out and get exercise. That's not something that's used in America. Runners. I actually didn't know that was a Canadian thing. Running shoes for sure. I understand. In America we'd say sneakers, running shoes. Not really running shoes. Maybe shoes, sneakers, tennis shoes, but not runners. I had not heard of that one, but it's close enough where I feel like I would have understood it, maybe, or would I have just been like runners? What do you mean? Is that some kind of hip new drink? Gonna get some runners.
There are lots of different terms they might use for this. Tennis shoes or running shoes.
Yeah.
Even though they might not specifically be for tennis or
Yeah,
running.
true.
Also, sneakers.
Yes.
Interesting. We don't use any of those words in the UK. We understand them. Sneakers, running shoes, tennis shoes. But I would say that running shoes would be specifically for running. In general, we call these shoes trainers.
Trainers. I feel like at some point maybe I've heard that. I don't watch a lot of British like movies or TV or anything. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I feel like I've heard trainers. That's not a Canadian thing though. Canadian is runners or running shoes. Got it. That is different. That is actually different from America. Slightly. All right, let's jump ahead again.
A long time ago in Canadian English, we called this a Chesterfield. But now
The Chester, yes, I've heard that. Oh man, that was from a video I watched about like Canadian slang a while ago. The Chesterfield. I never forgot that word. The Chesterfield.
Let's call it a couch. Sometimes we
Couch.
might say sofa, but usually when we see something like this, we say, I'm going to go sit on the couch.
Okay, so I was actually curious about this. Chesterfield is a Canadian term, but it's not really used much. Is that fair to say? Because couch and sofa, that's exactly what we say here in America. Literally the same.
I would call this either a couch or a sofa.
Yeah.
Funny. Okay, so we would hardly ever call this a couch. That sounds very American and Canadian to me.
Really?
We would almost always call this a sofa or sometimes a settee.
Settee? I've never heard of a settee. Feels like so far in this, Canada and America are actually more similar than Canada and Britain, which is what I kind of expected. It's actually interesting having this third point of view. Okay, settee. Never heard of that one. But, so Canada and America, we call the couch the same thing. It's the couch. Okay, what's this? Next we have a $1 or 1 pound. Okay.
Next one.
The $1 coin in Canada has a loonie on it. That's a bird that lives
Yes.
in northern Canada. So we decided we would just call this the loonie.
Yes, I know this one. The loony. I know this.
And when we decided to have a $2 coin, we thought we would call it a toonie.
Toonie.
Because it's worth
Most Americans don't know this one. It's very funny when I tell Americans about this one that it's like my fun fact. I go to, do you know Canadians call the $1 coin a loony and the $2 coin a toonie? And they're just like, okay, thanks, man. Thanks for the unsolicited Canadian knowledge. I'm like, you gotta know. I learned it from the internet. What do we call this in America? A $1? We don't really have a $1 coin. We do. We technically do have a $1 coin. I've had one before, but you never see that. It's a novelty. You don't spend $1 coins. You don't have $1 coins. It's very rare. We have $1 bills. But like that is by far what we have. We don't have the coins. And I just call it a dollar or a buck, maybe.
$2, and it rhymes with loony.
Slang for $1, a buck.
Yeah.
I love the loony and then the toonie. I think that's absolutely hilarious. Yeah, I've heard of buck before. So we don't have dollars in the UK. We have pounds.
Pound.
And our slang term for £1 is a quid.
A quid. I've heard of a quid. Yeah, that's right. Man, we all got some like strange words for stuff. When you think about a dollar, it's a dollar, and we're out here like, no, it's a quid, it's a buck, it's a loony. It's much more fun to say that, I gotta say. All right, let's jump ahead once again.
In Canada, we would call this pop. I think it's the second half of the word soda pop. I think my American cousins use the first part of the word. I think they call it soda, but we just call it pop.
Is that accurate? Do Canadians just say pop? Pop. This changes in America depending on what area of America you live in. Most Americans say soda. Do Canadians not say soda? Do Canadians say pop? I would have thought most say soda, because in America, I don't know why I thought that. I guess because most Americans say soda. Some parts of America say pop. And then even less, some parts of America say Coke. Not as in a Coke, like the brand, but they actually call, like, all soda a Coke. I'm gonna get a Coke, even though it might be a Sprite or something. It's kind of funny. Americans say soda, like by and far soda.
Actually, in the US, we use either
And maybe cola. Maybe every now and then you'll hear cola, but not really.
soda or pop, depending on the region. I personally use soda.
Soda.
Interesting. Okay. So there are definitely some clear similarities between those two,
Yeah.
unsurprisingly. In the UK, it's very different. You will find some people, I think more up north, saying pop.
Pop.
But in general, we call it fizzy drinks, which doesn't sound...
Fizzy drinks? Oh my gosh. Oh, I wish Canada called it fizzy drinks. Oh, I would have loved it. Oh, I would have had such a field day. It's Britain that says fizzy drinks. What?
Not as cool. Now, the words
That's fun. They're fizzy. They're drinks. That is fun. Again, Canada and America are more similar in this area. Saying pop. There's some overlap there. All right, let's jump ahead again.
In Canada, we use the metric system, so we measure distance in kilometers, but that seems like a really big word, so sometimes we just say clicks. If you ask someone, how do I get to Niagara Falls? They might
Clicks?
say, oh, it's about 40 clicks from here. Sometimes it's spelled with a C, sometimes with a K.
Clicks. Instead of kilometer, you might say clicks. I feel like I've heard that word, clicks. I thought that was like a naval or a ship term, nautical term. Like, it's 70 clicks to the southwest, Captain. Like, do Canadians say clicks? And do you use kilometers? But Canadians use, it's very confusing to me. I learned about this once. Canadians use imperial and metric. Do Canadians ever use miles? Or is it mostly kilometers? And then for short, maybe clicks. I didn't know about the clicks. That's fun. That's kind of cool. Clicks. I like that. What do Americans say? We would never say kilometer. We would say mile. We don't measure stuff in kilometers for any reason ever. It is forbidden.
I would call that 1 kilometer. But of course, in the US, we're much more familiar with miles.
Yeah.
So we're quite boring here. We would just call it a kilometre.
Okay.
But sometimes when we're running or doing sport, we will just shorten that down to K. So I love running.
1K. Yeah, like running a 10K, like a race. I've heard that before. Okay. Interesting. So Canada was actually the odd man out here with this clicks stuff. Is that all over Canada? The use of clicks? That's actually pretty cool. I actually like that. Huh. I'm going to start using that. Walmart is only 10 clicks from here. And then everyone will look at me and be like, what's he talking about? This is the same guy telling us about loonies and toonies? Get out of here with your clicks and your loonies. And be like, okay, just, all right, moving along. What do you call the final party that you have before you get married? The final party you have before you get married. Like a bachelorette party? Bachelor party?
On past.
In Canadian English, we would call this either a stag and doe or a Jack and Jill. It's a party.
Oh, really? Stag and doe? Like male and female? Jack and Jill? Like male and female? Not bachelor and bachelorette party. Stag and doe party. I've never heard that before. That's very fun, actually. And it makes sense. It's kind of more fun to say, like a stag and doe party, Jack and Jill party. This is equivalent to a bachelorette party or bachelor party. Is that right?
That a couple has about a month or two before their actual wedding, where they just invite friends and family over just to have a good time to celebrate the fact that they're getting married.
Well, now that sounds a bit different. In a American bachelor or American bachelorette party, it would really just be your friends. Typically, if you're the bride, it would just be your your female friends going out for a night on the town or whatever it is. That's kind of like the stereotypical. And the men go out and do men things, activities, and as kind of one of your final fun nights out before getting married or something silly like that. The idea that it's your family and friends all together, male and female, that is different. That is distinctly different. I'm a little confused here.
That would be a bachelor party for a man,
Yeah.
a bachelorette party for a woman.
Yeah.
It's completely different in the UK. We say hen do. A do is a party or a stag do. Now it's more common for them to be more than one night. People like to go away for weekends.
Oh my God. They take it this serious. Very intense in the UK. Hen do, hen, and then stag. There's like a male-female like inference there, I think. But the Canadian stag and doe, Jack and Jill. I have not heard those terms before, but they kind of imply like what it is. It kind of makes sense, but the way he described it though was a little confusing to me. Let me see if I can play that. Hear his explanation.
In Canadian English, we would call this either a stag and doe or a Jack and Jill. It's a party that a couple has about a month or two before their actual wedding.
Yeah, he's saying this is a party that the couple has, whereas a bachelor and bachelorette party in America are separate parties, and the bride and groom are distinctly off on their own, having their own separate parties. That's different. Dude, I'm sure Canadians have bachelorette and bachelor parties, or is it just this stag and doe, Jack and Jill, one party? That's very interesting. I've never learned about this before, about Canada. I'm still a little confused. It's very interesting though. Okay, let me see if I can jump ahead here to the next one. Feel free to give me some clarification on any of this in the comments. That'd be very helpful. Any of this stuff that you can tell I don't quite grasp all of it, or exactly what it means. Let's see here.
The end of a sentence to
what is your most commonly used question tag? Oh, I know this one.
See what he says.
Canadians often add the word a to the end of a sentence
Yeah.
to turn it into a question.
Famous, so famous. Literally all Americans, when we imagine Canadians and how Canadians talk, we imagine them saying A. Oh, how's it going, A? Nice day, eh? Like, almost to a stereotypical fault. I don't think Canadians use A as much as us Americans think. When Americans do a Canadian impression, we just fill it with A's everywhere. We do it to death, but it's also very endearing. And I know somewhat accurate. Canadians do use A. Like, it is true.
So I can't really explain how it works, but I'll give you a few examples. I could say, it's a nice day out here, eh? Or I could say, it's getting hot out here, eh? Or if it was getting a bit windy, I could say, it's getting windy out here, eh?
Right.
All of those would be examples of how Canadians use the word a.
I don't know what the American equivalent to A is. In America, you can use A. You can be like, good weather, eh? Like, or say it more like an American. It makes me talk more like with a Canadian inflection when I use it. Nice weather, eh? And Americans would absolutely know what you mean. We'd absolutely understand. But what would an American say? Typically? Like, right? Or something like, oh, that's the best restaurant in town, right? Yeah, something like that.
A common question tag in the US would be, right?
Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to hear Bob say A. I know it's a common stereotype that, there's two that I've heard of Canada, that they say a boot. In
Yes.
British English, we do use A sometimes.
Oh.
A. Or isn't it or doesn't it? We do say a lot. Oh, it's hot, isn't it?
Oh, true. Yeah, I feel like I've heard that before. Okay, so there's a similarity between Britain and I'm trying to find the next part in this video. Man, there's a lot there. Man, there's a lot of words here. Okay. Yeah, there's a similarity between Britain and Canada. A and A. Whereas here in America, We understand it, we just don't really use it, for sure.
Call them darts. But most
Okay, what are we moving on here? These are cigarettes. Let me see here. Okay.
we call them smokes. In some parts of Canada, they might call
Smokes.
them darts. But
Darts.
most people, I think, just call them cigarettes.
Yeah, I think that's the same here in America. You really don't hear smokes in America, though. I would understand what you meant. I would think you're being a little dramatic. I'd be like, is this a movie or something? Like Smokes? We're over dramatic, aren't we? But in Canada, apparently that'd be just normal, and I would be the over dramatic one, thinking it's a little strange. Cigarettes. Cigs. Yeah, that's about right. Darts. Nah, you don't hear darts in America, though.
I don't smoke, so I'm not super familiar here, but I would say cigarettes, or for shorter or for slang, ciggies or smokes.
Sure.
So
That's fair.
smokes
That's fair.
sounds very, very like American gangster film to me.
Yeah.
In British English, cigarettes or ciggies.
Ciggies.
We also use the word fag, which
Right.
if you use it to describe a person, it's a really offensive word, but it's a common slang term for cigarettes.
Yes, that's famous in America. The use of that word for cigarettes in Britain, which is apparently accurate. It's not meant to be offensive. It's just literally the word they use. Okay, moving along to what is this a picture of? Like ice pops?
So these are what we call freezies. You buy them.
Freezies! Freezies! Man, if you came up to me and said, oh, would you like a freezy? I'm not sure I would know what you mean. I wouldn't really know exactly what you meant. I wouldn't have pictured this. This, to me, is an ice pop, actually. Huh.
them in the store and they're not frozen. When you come home, you put them in the freezer, and in a couple days they're frozen. And then on a hot day, kids can take them out,
Yeah.
snip the end off with a pair of scissors, and
I feel like this has a brand name or something, but do we all just call it something different?
eat it to cool off.
I'd call this a popsicle.
Popsicle! Yeah, okay, I should have thought of that. But a popsicle is usually on a little wooden stick. That's a popsicle. I would call that an ice pop. A little different. I don't know if that changes depending on where you are in America. Freezy. But I've never really heard of a freezy.
Okay, so yeah, we'd definitely call in British English this a popsicle.
Okay, so the popsicle as well. So Canada has its own special word for a popsicle or ice pop. The frozen, like, treat in a little tube that you freeze in your freezer. So, I mean, when I say it like that, freezy makes sense, actually. All right, jumping ahead here.
So in Canada, we would call this homo milk or whole milk. Homo is
milk.
short for homogenized. I think they mix the milk and the cream together so it won't separate anymore. So this
Okay, so this is just milk. We would call it milk, whole milk. Never homo milk. Don't say homo milk in America. It would not be a good thing. You would sound strange. People would give you strange looks. Yeah, because we don't call it like, I've heard of homogenized. I know it's homogenized, but we don't bother even saying that or homo milk. Just milk, just milk.
in Canada would be either homo milk or whole milk.
Huh,
That would be whole milk.
whole milk.
Okay, so if someone asked me for homo milk, I would not know what they're talking about.
Right.
I would understand whole milk, but in the UK we tend to call it full fat milk or
Full fat milk. Oh God, that makes it sound like unhealthy, almost. Full fat milk. I'd be like, okay, no thanks. No, keep it away from me. Now it's just like a bunch of these so far. Like the UK, America, and Canada are just different words for everything. Even though we all speak English, it's really actually fascinating and quite fun. Let's see here, moving along.
So we would call this either a parking garage or a parkade.
I learned this one in part one. The last time I learned about words Canadians say differently than us Americans, I learned about the parkade. That's what we call a parking garage. Parkade. That sounds very fancy. I would have had no clue what that meant, but luckily I have learned this one.
When you go to see a show in a city like Toronto, you park your car in a parking garage or in a parkade.
Parkade.
I would call this a parking garage.
Yes.
For me, this is a multi-story car park. We do have a habit of over.
Multi-story car park. Okay. Parkade in Canada, multi-story car park in the UK. Who knew? What is this? This looks like a bathroom, which I think I also know in Canada. It's a washroom. It's not a bathroom. And let me say, washroom sounds also very fancy, very proper. The washroom. I'd like to go to the washroom. If you said that in America, people would just look at you and be like, okay, Mr. Fancy Pants, the washroom, you're gonna, it's over there. If we call it bathroom, maybe the restroom.
So we would call this a washroom in Canada.
Right.
I still remember one of my first visits to the US when I asked someone if I could use their washroom, and they looked at me funny because I think they call it a bathroom there. But in Canada, this is
Yeah. Americans would. It's funny because it's so close to saying bathroom or restroom that some Americans might be able to guess what you mean, but it's just not a term that's used here. So I would have thought like you need somewhere to wash. Like, what do you mean? Wash your dishes? Like, it's just a hair confusing. Where there's a fair bit of Americans that really wouldn't know what you're trying to say, honestly.
definitely a washroom.
I would call this a bathroom, or we would also say restroom.
Right.
Interesting.
I was really shocked by this one. I did not know about this one for the longest time. Washroom.
In British English, we'd understand washroom and restroom and
Okay.
bathroom, of course.
Okay.
But we tend to call it the loo or just simply the toilet.
The loo? Never heard of a loo. Toilet. That's very blunt. I think Canadians and Americans would understand if someone was like, "Excuse me, can you direct me to the toilet?" You'd be like, "Okay, you're obviously in need of going to the bathroom. That way, right over there." But it's very blunt, like toilet. We don't really say it like that, huh? What else do we have here? Skip ahead to the next one. Okay.
We would call this either a fire hall or a fire station. The fire hall is the place where you
Oh.
would find firefighters and fire trucks, and if there's a fire, the alarm goes off and they jump in their trucks and they go to put out the fire. So we
Fire hall. We would call it a fire station. Or fire department. Most people would say, "Oh, that's the fire department." And we'd be referring to the building, not the people working there. "Oh, it's the fire department." Maybe fire station? I've never heard anyone say fire hall. But again, I understand what that means, just based on the words. It's funny how there's some words here Canadians say, like washroom and fire hall, that I can just understand enough by kind of thinking about it, I guess.
would call it a fire hall or a fire station.
Fire station, but also firehouse.
Firehouse.
Interesting.
Okay, I would understand that as well. That's not really commonly used in America, or maybe some parts of America.
For us, this is just a fire station. We never ever say fire hall.
Fire station. I would say that as well for America. It's mostly fire station or fire department. Okay.
In Canada, we often refer to electricity as hydro. Sometimes the
Hydro. Oh, this is another one. I heard about. This is absolutely one of the biggest differences between Canadian and American English language. A word like electricity is a different word in Canada. I assume Canadians say electricity sometimes. Canadians use the word electricity, but also, I've learned, they say hydro, which you could never say hydro to an American and expect them to understand. I had no idea. Hydro, no idea. That means nothing to an American. They would have no clue what you're talking about, which is funny because I think it's a pretty commonly used word in Canada. Hydro, I think it's like short for hydroelectric. but in America, we just say electric. The electric bill. You know, that's all.
There's a storm and the hydro goes out. The poles along the road are called hydro poles. So I think
It's funny. It's funny even hearing him say it. Because it's just, that is so, couldn't be more different.
this is because a lot of our electricity comes from hydroelectric power plants.
Right.
But in Canada, you call electricity hydro.
Wow.
We call that electricity.
Electricity. Wait, he even said, in Canada, we call electricity hydro. Which means he knows about electricity. So what is this? What is this little game we're playing? Maybe us Americans need to switch to hydro. I actually enjoy that there's a difference between words like this. It's actually more fun that way.
Interesting. Because if you said the hydro wasn't working, I would presume that was your water supply.
Yeah.
In British English, we call this electricity.
Electricity. That does not surprise me, actually. What else do we have here? I'm gonna jump ahead to what looks like a napkin?
And you use a serviette to wipe it off. So
Serviette? Are Canadians really saying serviette? Again, I say this word a lot, but some of these Canadian words just sound fancy. The parkade, the serviette. Pass me the serviette, please, before I go to the washroom. It just sounds much more pleasant. Whereas us Americans are just like, the napkin. Pass me the napkin before I go to the toilet. Don't Canadians say napkin? I know I'm assuming things for no reason again, but I would have thought that was just a napkin's a napkin. You say serviette?
this is what we in Canada would call a serviette.
Wow.
That's a paper napkin.
Napkin.
Interesting. In British English, we use both.
Oh. So there's a little British-Canadian overlap. They use serviette. Serviette would mean nothing here in America. Just like hydro. Serviette means nothing to an American. Now I know. I feel like I can become like a translator or something. Maybe a new career path. American-Canadian translator. The serviette. And what do they have here? Finally here they just have the 2-4, which I've heard about. I've heard of the 2-4, which means a case of beer. We don't say 2-4 here in America, but I think that's actually the final one. And this list was actually quite good. There were a couple that I've heard of before, but a ton that I had never heard of before. And I love that. Again, I'm so delighted that there's a shocking amount of different words that Canadians use compared to what we use here in America. I would not have expected that. I really did not expect so many words. You know, we both speak English. We sound pretty similar. But there's just the most random selection of stuff we call different things, which is actually pretty cool. Like, cool that there's those little fun differences between our cultures. And yeah, I feel like I understand Canadians a little better. I can do some translating. This video was by English with Lucy, and I gotta give it a like. That was very good. Very fun hearing the British perspective as well. It didn't end up being all that related to Canadian language as I expected, actually. There were a lot of just Canadian-only words, which was really fun to learn about. So I enjoyed this quite a bit. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment, perhaps with your thoughts on any of these Canadian or American words that we use differently. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canada and Canadian culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.